And I had all nicely arranged too, so I had it in a specific order, so I knew what I was coming up to. But no, bastard things have to jump around. Hi there, Malcolm here with my 168th Booktube video, and today I'll be bringing you my March wrap-up and April TBR. And yes, I'm filming this on the 20th, and yes, I haven't actually finished editing last month's wrap-up and TBR. I'll get there. Starting off with the numbers game, where I managed to finish 9 books, totaling 1,393 pages. Quite a bit of a drop-off from last month, so I'm only 483 pages ahead of last year. Really need to up my game. But still, a lot of books to get through, so let's get cracking. So first off is Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu, and I listened to this on Audible. As we now have our Audible, I thought I'd go through some of the old classics, and it was recommended to me that I try Carmilla, which is the precursor to Dracula and said to inspire Bram Stoker to write Dracula. So I'll give it a go. So Carmilla, what's it about? The story follows a girl who can barely rub 2 brain cells together, who was very much looking forward to meeting a friend of hers that she hasn't seen for a long time, but is saddened to hear that she died in weird and mysterious circumstances. She's travelling with her father and they encounter a mysterious young girl around the same sort of age as the deceased friend, who's in a bit of a state, and her mum agrees to leave her with these complete strangers while she goes off on some mystery errand. You following me so far? So they take this complete strange young girl back home, and they become besties, basically. And it's made very clear that we're not allowed to know anything about this mysterious person, apart from that she's named Carmilla. But they seem to get on all right, very much all right, really. And some weird stuff happens, and the young girl doesn't twig at all that any of it is related to her friend. Toward the end of this mercifully short tale, they encounter the man of the original friend who died, and he recounts an identical story in terms of encountering a mysterious young girl whose name is a very obvious anagram of Carmilla, and where weird stuff happened. And of course, having heard the exact same story that she has herself experienced with Carmilla, she doesn't draw any conclusions to this whatsoever and see that it's the same thing at all. Like I say, she can barely rub 2 brain cells together. So that's essentially the entire story, so I've saved you having to listen to that dross. My word, this was terrible. I say, the only saving grace of the story was that it was short. There was no intrigue whatsoever. The chemistry between these two was ridiculously non-existent. I mean, honestly, they were besties, but Carmilla never gave anything in terms of charm or personality that was interesting. I mean, obviously she had some sort of mesmerising effect over this poor girl, whose name I can't remember at all and don't care. And the story's just full of them sort of wafting about, not doing anything in particular for hours on end. Terribly boring, terribly irritating, and that this total idiot didn't actually realise that this total stranger who was not able to reveal anything about her past, had no past, or had too much past, depending on where you looked. And as far as I can tell, the only inspiration that Bram Stoker could have taken from this atrocious story was that to do Dracula in no way, shape or form like Carmilla. And actually completely succeeded because Dracula was brilliant, in my humble opinion. So I'm going to say boring, just plain dull. I would have ranked it lower, but it is like sort of one of the first stories of its kind, so I will give it some kudos to that. That's all I'm willing to do. Anyway, so after that dismalness, I then moved on to The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi, and I have done a separate video on this, so click on the link below to go and check out what I thought of this one. Spoilers, I end up recommending it very highly. And then when I finished that, I then moved on to The Accident by Diane Ho. This is a point horror story. Now, the previous Diane Ho point horror story didn't really do that well to me, so I was kind of dubious to know how this was going to go down. So The Accident is the first supernatural point horror story that I've read. All the other ones are just sort of psychos and lunatics and revenge type stories. And this is sort of a revenge type story, but this one time it's a ghost. Where again, another particularly dim character moves into a house with her parents, which used to belong to a grandmother who's recently died, by a lakeside. And she's not in her room 5 minutes when a ghost starts talking to her through a mirror and asks her, can I swap bodies with you? I want to live in your body for a bit because I want to remember what it's like to be alive and all that. Yeah, only for a week. Now, it's put down to the fact that this girl is compassionate, which is why she said yes. But I'd say pretty bloody stupid would be a more accurate description. Now, it's this thing to occupy her body while she becomes a drifting entity to find this being wants revenge on her entire family and existence, and of course, no, you can't have your body back. Surprise, surprise. Now, I don't want to be too harsh on this one, because actually it was a fairly intriguing story, regardless of the fact that she was really irritating in doing some stupid things like that. And yeah, the backstory revealed was kind of interesting, although, again, these point horrors do seem to have revenge stories based on very weird reasonings. But yeah, I'll give it a worth reading. It's better than some of the other ones I've read. Not as good as others, but yeah, it was alright. And the climax was pretty good. So that was that one. After that, I then moved on to The Invitation by Diane Ho, another point horror story. And this one, I haven't seen it, but I think it has the same sort of premise as Knives Out, that sort of thing. You know, the unpopular group are invited to a hoity-toity party, which they do, even though they don't actually like any of the people there. So it does beg a question why they did it in the first place. And of course, they start getting hunted. Not quite in the way that it sounds, but there is a very interesting twist to it, which again is a revenge story based on some very weird reasonings. But anyway, this was, I think, one of Diane Ho's better point horror attempts. Very strong tale. I was engrossed throughout. And like I say, I think the reasoning behind it all was a bit daft, but it worked. And yeah, buy it. You know, not bad. And then following that one, I then moved on to The Snowman by R.L. Stein, who you might recognise from the Goosebumps series of books, which for the most part aren't great. I like the first one, Welcome to Dead House, fantastic. The rest at best. So I came in this one with a little bit of trepidation, thinking it's R.L. Stein, dream sequences and all of this. Yeah, dream sequences. I think we even opened with a dream sequence. She wakes up and it was all fine, or whatever. I was like, goodness sakes. So The Snowman doesn't actually feature a snowman as the main part of the plot, so there's a snowman in it. It's about a character called the Snowman who enters this girl's life mysteriously, and again, it's another complete person we know nothing about coming into somebody's life and going, hi, I want to be part of your life. Oh, why not? You don't know anything about this guy. And as a favour to her, he murders her stepdad, or uncle or something. I think it's her uncle, who's not very nice. As you do, you know, it's not... Yeah, it's one of those stories that I think in theory should work, but doesn't work really at all, and it just turned out to be... Ugh. I really just detest really stupid decisions that make no sense, and there's plenty of them in this one. Boring, just plain dull. Not very interesting at all. Yeah, it's not the worst book I've ever read, but yeah, yeah. Moving on, I then read The Blood of Carthage, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer graphic novel. This was actually quite an intriguing story. Buffy, while trying to take out a big bad in the area, eliminates more of a guardian demon that's stopping an even bigger bad from doing its thing. And the group of demons that were in cahoots with this other one to stop this bad thing happening then want revenge on Buffy. And then the bad thing happens, and anyway, there's quite a lot going on in here, and it's alright. I think it's a little overlong. I think it's a little too convoluted for what it needs to be. And it's only Buffy, for goodness sakes. Yeah, the artwork's pretty cartoony, but it's alright. Apparently I said buy it, so I must have liked it quite a bit. Now, for fans of Spike, he's in it. He's on the front cover there. And then some interesting new alliances made as Buffy ends up having to join team forces with this Blood of Carthage, which is pact of demons to stop this big bad thing from happening. Of course, like all these alliances, they're tenacious at best. And then after that, I then read All the Colours of Darkness by Lloyd Biggle Jr. This is book one of the Jan Darzek series. This is a reread for me, and this is one of my all-time favourite books. The second book of the series is my all-time favourite book, so I was really excited to read this one, particularly as it means I get to read book 2 next time round, which I just can't wait for. So, All the Colours of Darkness sees the birth of the matter transporter on Earth. Now, no more wasted time on trains, planes and automobiles. You can step through a doorway and you end up in the destination of your choice in an instant. Fantastic stuff. Except the company that were trying to produce these things have been beleagued by setbacks and faulty components and several false starts. However, finally, despite all that, they actually get going and things are looking good until a person disappears. They step through a gate and they're never seen again. But no friends or relations come forward with complaints, and the ID that the person presented is false. Nobody knows who this person was, and nobody seems to miss them. A bit later, another person disappears with the same exact type of scenario. This keeps happening, and so the company hire private detective Jan Darzek to try and help them investigate just what is going on. And of course, he does uncover the scam, but it's a far more further reaching scam than just Earth. Written in 1963 with 1986 being this far off future where matter transmitters are being invented, this is still surprisingly relevant and I feel is aged really well, and I thoroughly enjoyed a rereading. Booktastic. And after that I then read Haunted, another Buffy the Vampire Slayer graphic novel, and this one follows the destruction of the school and the mayor having turned into the great big snake thing and then being killed. If you haven't seen the show, don't worry. But this follows the mayor's point of view, having been killed, and he's now this sort of wandering spirit who wants to get his revenge and starts inhabiting dead birds and humans and even vampires eventually to try and get his revenge against Buffy. Some really interesting ideas and a lovely new point of view. Really enjoyed this one. It even involves Riley with his secret underground base and all that. So really enjoyable. I think one of the more cleverer ideas in the Buffyverse, certainly in the graphic novel verse. And the artwork is pretty good. You can tell who's who, which is the main thing. Buy it. And then finally, I also read Autumnal, another Buffy the Vampire Slayer graphic novel, obviously. And in this one, a time-travelling demon is chased by a time-travelling slayer from the past, or a past, and obviously turns up in Buffy's time. And so, apart from having a time-travelling demon and slayer, which is quite interesting in its own, the other complication is this demon seems to be damn near indestructible. So, they're going to kill something, it can't be killed. It was alright. Again, some really neat ideas in here. Quite enjoyed it. I'd say buy it. Artwork again for you. Certainly above average for the Buffy graphic novels. So those are the books I have managed to read. So moving on to books I plan to read for the month of April. Bearing in mind it is the 20th already. So my book of the month is The Brink, which is book 2 of the Awaken series by James S. Murray and Dan Wearmouth. The Awaken is a very trashy horror based on the siege type story in the underground, in a subway system with deadly monsters that live in the dark. However, I absolutely loved it because that mindless action thriller stuff that you either love or hate, and I really enjoyed it. So I picked up book 2. I'm very eager to see where the story goes on from there. And once I've done that, I'll then move on to Servant of Empire by Raymond E. Feist and Janie Wirtz, a book I was supposed to finish during the month of March, but it's dang big, and you can see I'm still on it. In fact, I only read The Brink because I stopped this so I could read it, and then I came back to it. Really loving it, but bloody hell, humongous. So this is book 2 of second trilogy of the Rift War series, and this is on the Kelowin side of the Rift, where we follow Mara, who's just trying to survive as she's become head of her house after the deaths of her brother and father. And that was book 1. Book 2 is the continual survival of this and the retributions that she's got to try and survive from having survived the first book. Really, really good. Hoping to finish this in the next couple of days. Particularly as, if I do, I'll then move on to West of Eden by Harry Harrison. Another tome, I notice. This is book 1 of the West of Eden trilogy. I have read it before. Absolutely love this one. And it's a what if the dinosaurs didn't die out 65 million years ago, and what would it be like today? And you can see there's a sort of a humanoid type dinosaur person thing known as the Yelani, I think is how you pronounce it, as they are the dominant species, but they're coming into conquest against the rise of this new mammal type man. And we follow a key Yelani and we follow a key man as these two species clash, and it's the story of these two particularly, and I'm really looking forward to reading it again. Really doubt I'm going to finish it this month, but I'll waive the extra books of the 4 books I try and read a month in my normal reading part anyway, knowing full well that I'm going to have to wave them at you next month. But they will be The Time Travelling Caveman by Terry Pratchett, more of his collected stories, sadly says on the back here, the final short story collection. Yeah, it's going to be a bit sad to read those, but silly, zany and short. No, I've read the other short story collections. They're not as good as his main stuff because they're his earlier works, but no, I think he's one of the best authors of all time. Looking forward to reading this one. And when I've done that, I'll move on to more Terry Pratchett, Lords and Ladies, one of the Discworld books, and the second of the Witches series, with all the witches in them. Yeah, Magrat, Granny Weatherwax and Nanny Og. And this one basically explores the reasons why we have Morris dancers and the true nature of elves. This is going to be a reread. I've read all of Discworld and I'll just never stop reading it because it is just so good. Alright, so that was that one. Graphic novels, I'm still playing on with the Buffys. I've got Oz next to read, and then I'll keep on going. So Oz's story, presumably. And to my wife, I am still reading A Bone Silence by Alistair Reynolds. This is book 3 of the Revenger series. Fully expecting to finish that in April. I have. That'd be cool. And if I do, We'll then move on to The Shadow Casket by Chris Wooding. This is a book to the Darkwater Legacy series. Absolutely fantastic new fantasy series, which is really thick. We've got these lovely, gorgeous, straight-edged editions. Oh, look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? And folly front. Yeah, the book one, The Ember Blade, was all about our heroes getting hold of this mystical object to try and use it Darksaber style to reunite the tribes and clans to fight back the overlords. And this is the continuation of that story. So really interested to see where it goes from there. And I would certainly recommend Ember Blade for anyone who wants to try some epic fantasy but balks at the density of the Lord of the Rings or the seriously huge number of books in the Wheel of Time. They want something a little bit easier. And okay, these aren't small books, but the reading of them is very easy to do, and there's some brilliant characters in them. I mean, Chris Wooding does excellent characters. I think it's everything. I'm still very slowly reading The Walking Dead, The Fall of the Governor Part 2 while boiling the kettle. That's by Robert Kirkman and Jamie Bonanzinga. So I hope you enjoyed that. I'll try and get this all edited, because I've got last month's edit to do still, and I've got the Kaiju to edit still, and I've got this one to edit. I've got a lot of editing to do. So hopefully I can get all that out for you very soon. But yeah, feel free to comment below on books that you've seen today. Ones you've liked, ones you haven't liked, ones you're curious about. Curious to know your reasonings. Or, share your reading list. What are you reading this month? Anything you think that I should read, having seen the eclectic bunch of things I've waved at you. Okay, it's mostly science fiction, horror and fantasy. Comments below, links, lists, things that are nice. So until next time, enjoy spring and see you later. Bastards! And it would be the one book that I've got my bookmark in, and it's just jumped out to you. Absolute